We are live. Dr. Archie, what's happening?
What's up, Vince? It's November, man. We're closing out the year, man.
I know, crazy, right? Could you believe that it's November? Literally blinked our eyes. It's the end of the year.
It's it's happening too fast. I'm already seeing the Christmas stuff out there. Go to Costco and you see Christmas stuff, man.
Oh
It's not
yeah,
even
dude, it's
Thanksgiving
everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere, man. Pretty pretty crazy. Um Man, how long has it been since you opened the practice? What month was that?
yet. So I signed in March and then officially opened in August. So it's been about roughly 3 months.
3 months open, but you're
Yeah.
probably 6, 7 months in the process.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. Yeah,
It's crazy.
it's been a
Crazy to think.
blur, right?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about how the process of creating and just building it out from March until August and how much has been kind of changed and continually like changing. I'm still changing things right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you guys can
Yeah.
continue to evolve for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the past couple months for you has been crazy because you closed out your gig with Dale,
Hmm.
um, started a new academy, or started training at a new academy,
Yeah.
and then you trimmed down your commute, but now you're commuting to your own place, which literally 6 months ago was, a blank office space. And now you're,
Yeah, man. If you've seen the pictures of what this place was, I had some customers that would come in and that knew what this place was before, and they're just shocked on how much it's changed.
what was it before?
So it was a small business like threading place.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly what they did with the threading, but that's why there was a sink here randomly. And then after them, it was just two real estate agents
Oh,
that used it
interesting,
as an office. Yeah.
interesting. And then how long was it vacant before you guys moved in?
I have no idea. They said it maybe the coffee shop that's right next to me. They said maybe about a year.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
So it was like I guess that was post COVID because that would have been 2023. So
Yeah,
yeah,
roughly.
that's wild, dude. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So kind of going through the motions here, 90 days in. I mean, obviously, I mean, you've been planning this for, I mean, over a year now, right? So planning it over a year
Hmm.
conceptually. 6 months ago, you start taking steps forward, get the real estate. Um, Now you're open. Now that you're open, what has been the thing that you underestimated about the whole project?
I think one of the things that comes to the top of my mind is dialing in the numbers. Now that it's been 3 months, obviously when you start, you don't know those numbers. You got these kind of
Project.
predictions, your
Yeah.
projections, right? So the first 2 months, I was just kind of do what work and feel it out, right? I was just feeling it out. It feels busy today, feels busy this week. And then there's some days where like I was counting how much income was coming in. But this third month, I actually printed out a detailed report. How many new leads are coming in? How many leads did I have? Um, what's the revenue? And such a big eye opener
Oh yeah.
from compared to what I'm just like, okay, this is what I kind of feel like it's happening. It feels busy, but in reality, it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, you could always continue to optimize, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good starting point, right? It's like you got to understand what the scorecard is
Yeah.
is saying. I think the other thing too that's interesting is a lot of times people will immediately measure the financials, right? How much expenses,
Hmm.
how much debt, um, all of the financial obligations, and then what does that look like, right? From a net income, right? So positive or negative. I think where people miss, and I think you're on track there of like looking at the drivers. So the drivers would be how many leads are coming in, how much output am I doing, right? How many phone calls am I doing, how many emails, how many social media posts, like all of that, right? Those are the drivers that impact people to come in. And those are things like the better you can fine tune the drivers, the better probability you'll have the financial output or the financial result that you need, right? So it's like there's kind of like this give and take thing that
Mm-hmm.
that you got to do, and then the thing that ties it together is like, okay, hey, operationally inside of the four walls of your facility, how do you optimize it and make it where every opportunity, right? Because you're working super hard to generate the leads, working very, very efficiently to get them into the door. And then, operationally within those four walls, like, okay, the moment that they come in, how do we make sure that they have the highest probability of, of success? And then also to the other part of it is not just a one-time transaction, but also the life of the
Mm-hmm.
actual relationship that you have, which is those are the things that start to compound, right? Because it's like it's way different if you have clients that are coming in and they're only coming in for 2 or 3 sessions versus
Yeah.
somebody that stays with you for a year and a half, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it compounds significantly different for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also made me kind of evaluate what exactly am I doing this past month, or am I doing the same thing? Do things need to change? Do we need to pick things up? That's what it really what I learned just printing out those metrics and reports is now it's like now I'm being more direct with who I'm working with or whoever I hire or even the leads that I get through a simple message. It's not like, hey, they'll come in when they'll come in. No, I'm gonna say, get in. Like here, this is what I'm offering.
Yeah,
I'm just being just want to get them in type thing. So
yeah. Which again, it should be right because
right.
just like any other purchase or transaction, people have these little windows of when they're interested and ready to go through and learn more about whatever it is that you did to pique their interest.
Hmm.
If you allow them to come in on their own, I mean, people are going to do the natural thing, especially when it comes to health and fitness or health and wellness. um, People are going to do what they've always done, which is make poor decisions around their health and wellness, and they're going to continue to procrastinate and make freaking crappy decisions. And it's your job once you have them interested, like in that window, like man, you gotta get them to take action.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny you say that.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, the that's the hard part about it, right? Is like
Oh.
you understand the value of what comes along with your services,
Hmm.
and they inquired because there is some degree of pain or something that they have going on that they want to resolve. But they've been, when you actually speak to them, right, in the event that you ever do, right, because in some cases people start the process and never follow through, like they do with a lot of other things in their life, right? um, but it is one of those things where um, they're going to deal with pain for 6, 7, 8 months before they do anything about it, right? And if you
Hmm.
have them for that one moment, like you got to be direct.
Right.
There's a degree of persistence, right? And
Hmm.
there's something I learned. Actually, learned this at a men's conference um, at our church, and they talked about there's passiveness, right? So some people approach things very passively, kind of like what you said of like, oh well, they came in, they're interested, they'll know about us, and they'll come in when they want to come in. And then there's aggressive, right? Which is like, okay, I'm going to call them, 10 times in a row, and I'm going to put the fear of Dr. Archie in them, right? So there's
Hmm.
this. And then if you start to not get the results that you want from being passive or aggressive, people become this like weird passive aggressive, right? Um,
Yeah.
but the reality is like the solution to all that is being assertive,
Right.
right? And you can assert yourself into a conversation and still be professional and still be kind and still be um uh passionate and compassionate about their situation. But yeah, for sure, as the owner of the business and a business that is designed to support your family, right, both short term and long term, right, there
Hmm.
is a degree of, man, I'm going to have to assert myself, right, and be a little bit more assertive. um and again, I think that there's a relationship there with jiu-jitsu, right, because you can't be too passive, you can't be too aggressive, but you definitely have to insert your game into every role, right, and there's a
Hmm.
degree of assertiveness that happens because your opponent is trying to show their skill and you're trying to defend against that, and it's like, okay, am I 50-50 here on offense defense, or am I just, man, I'm getting crushed, kind of like the situation I was telling you earlier of my experience training yesterday of just like, man, I got freaking mopped up, and my entire day was spent around playing defense, right? um which again, there's times where those are learning and that's fun, and there's other times where you're, flip side of that. But the ideal scenario is, there's a little bit of balance of both.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: from obviously you're learning a ton.
Hmm.
What would you say is the biggest lesson that that you learned out of this whole interaction or this whole process?
Like overarching or something more in like the profession, like technicality or business, or in
L-
what
l- l-
sense?
let's go both, right? If we just
Okay.
say, because I think there's a there are two different worlds, right?
Hmm.
The practice that you are pursuing,
Hmm.
and then the actual business that delivers the service
Yeah.
of your practice, right? So what would you say is the learning lesson? Let's start with the practice, with
With the
with just you working with patients and stuff. What's been the biggest learning so far?
biggest learning. So, biggest learning with the practice. I recently got approved to be in in network. I got approved to be in network with an insurance group.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, this is like, I guess, a lesson, or I'm trying to create more revenue for the office by
Sure.
finding other avenues. So this is one of the avenues. But one of the biggest lessons I learned with insurance is like when you are in network with them, you are in some sense an employee of the insurance. You are doing exactly what they are, quote unquote, advising you to do. But if you don't do that, they will not compensate you.
Oh yeah.
So it's so interesting. It's like, let's say you're a coach for a jiu-jitsu school and they're telling you you have to teach this way and only this way. If you don't teach it this way, you're not going to get paid.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I'm learning with in network insurance, and I'm discovering why most offices don't accept insurances. Number one, number two, or and even the physical therapists, they're going that route too. Like it's so interesting to actually personally experience that, because now I am learning a whole way of providing care for a patient, or between my systems that I normally do it and then the systems how the insurance network does it. So, I mean, obviously,
Is it is
there's
it is it that different between what you would want to pursue as an independent chiropractor or
um,
what the insurance is guiding you to
I would
do?
say it's more work towards examinations and what you can and can't do. Um, so in the examinations part, like if someone comes in with shoulder pain, like you ever go to those offices, like I don't know why they're just doing all these tests on me. Like it just hurts here. Just
Right.
do something about
Yeah. Make it
it.
go away.
So, yeah, so it's it's that it's that like process. They're putting you through all these little tests because they have to. Otherwise, they 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 can't document it or whatever reason they it needs to be done. So um that's in what sense it's happening in my practice. So I'm still learning exactly because I just got approved for since November 1st. So I'm like going through the training processes with them right now. So I
That,
have
that,
to go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry. No, no, no. Go for it. Go for it.
So I have to kind of like I'm going through training. Feels
Yeah.
like it's so interesting, but I forgot where I was going with that, but that yeah, practice wise, like I can't be doing specific, like if someone's coming in with primarily a neck pain or discomfort, I can't work on other areas of the body type thing unless I have
Mm.
justification for it. But if they're primarily coming in for that, this is what you should be treating, not anywhere else.
What's interesting about that, I was literally talking to TK about this because he hurt his shoulder and he's been wrestling with
Hmm.
that shoulder injury. And he was asking me about how I went through with mine. And I've talked about it. I actually talked about it with uh, Diana from Open Mat Physio
Hmm.
about how frustrating it was because it was exactly that. Um, I was a patient going through my insurance, and I'm like, exactly what you're saying, man. I just want to make this go away, and okay, physical therapy, and they want to prescribe me pills, and go back to physical therapy, and um, you know, all of the different, I guess, kind of steps before I was able to actually get an MRI, actually see a specialist, actually go through a process of a surgery consultation and all that. I mean, it was a nightmare, right? To be able to continue to go back, like, okay, we got to do whatever 8 more weeks of physical therapy, and then if this doesn't work, then they're gonna give me a cortisone shot, and then I have to wait another 8 weeks of cortisone shot plus physical therapy in order for me to see if it's improved or whatever the case is. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that's freaking a nightmare. But it was pretty funny because TK was is going through that right now, and he was getting so frustrated as he talked about it, if you can imagine,
Hmm.
about what his experience was with the doctor because he was trying to just bypass all of that and just go directly to somebody to be able to see it. They were sharing with him about, oh no, we have to have an X-ray first. And he's like, well, I know it's not broken. Like, you know, could we kind of get past that through that whole process? But again, there's a bureaucracy for sure that comes along with that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and I don't know if it's in the other professions, but in chiropractic, there is a revenue that the insurance or clientele that they need to meet, like a quota. So for and I don't know if it's checked semester, quarterly, but if they don't have the funds, they're gonna cut the compensation or the payout to the claims that you submit.
Mm.
So you could be being paid full, like as a provider, full price for your services one time. The other time, they could pay, they can cut 75% if they want because
Oh,
you are responsible as a provider to provide a letter stating to the patient whatever services are not covered, the patient's going to be responsible for. So, guess who has to talk to the patient and tell them the bad news?
right.
The provider. And then now you're looked at, well, my insurance covered this last time, and now you have to explain it to them. it's it's I don't know. I'm actually thinking about just like stepping out of the in-network insurance, but I want to give it a shot.
Yeah,
I want to give it a chance because let's see if it works. Because there's offices out there that are successful with it.
yeah. I'm sure it becomes a volume play, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, hey, if I can set up every opportunity to create or increase my volume of lead flow and patients through the door, then those are things that are good, especially in the early phases, right? It makes me think of. Have you heard of ClassPass? You know what ClassPass is?
I feel like I heard it as a UFC gym term.
Well, it's funny that you say that because ClassPass is a aggregator, and what they do is people subscribe to a ClassPass membership, and they pay ClassPass as a whole. But part of ClassPass is there's a network that you could go and take classes
Mm,
to any class inside of this network. And you bypass the membership process. You just go and are able to drop in and take a class, which um, is really cool for the consumer because they could come in and try a bunch of classes and don't have to commit to a membership. They don't even have to go through the sales process, right? It's the way that the contract is written. And the theory is it gets people in the door for you to convert them into something else, down the road because you deliver a great experience inside of there.
mm-hmm.
And the challenge is the fitness facility takes a fraction of what they would typically charge. And then you couple that with, man, they're bypassing the typical sales and enrollment process. So, it's kind of a push pull, right? Where, like you said, hey, there's some people that flourish really, really well and they figured out a way to optimize that lead flow.
Mm-hmm.
And other times, again, it just becomes a scenario of like, man, I'm just giving this damn service away and it's just creating an administrative nightmare on the back end, right? So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that comes to life. Obviously, there's a difference between insurance and ClassPass, but the philosophy is essentially the same, right? I pay this third party tells me what to do, and
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, I only get a fraction of what I'm supposed to be getting if I were to just do this directly.
Yeah.
But the theory is exactly the same, right? Of like, okay, hey, well, this creates another avenue of people that could come through the door
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't have come to me because they're only going to be going through insurance. They would never pay privately for it.
Right. Right. And yeah, and you're right. That's the way I'm looking at it. Not only just trying it, it's just okay, now they get to meet me and see what it's like to work with me. Um, and share with anyone else that they may think that could benefit from it too as well. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Because
Yeah.
part of as you build a funnel, right, it's going to come from things like your Google business profile and your Instagram post and, some of the content that you create and whatever collaborations you could create inside the community and the relationships that you build at whatever the chamber or BNI, and then this being another avenue of uh, of potential lead flow that can come in,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's just a matter of, okay, hey, is there enough of it, and are you set up internally to be able to to support that, right, and convert it into
Mm-hmm.
to the highest probability of revenue. What's interesting about that? So I did recruiting with um, my staffing group where I did recruiting for medical doctors. And what I found fascinating about um, about that, so I dealt with family practice and general practitioners and internal medicine, and I was doing this whole kind of process of recruiting and bring them to a facility. Anyways, going through the whole recruiting process. I don't want to bore you with that part of it, but what I found interesting about that was their compensation plans um, were built around patient volume. And again, it was one of those things where in general, like I would think, okay, yeah, that there is some incentive of like, okay, hey, they have to treat a certain amount of people, but like their compensation was driven by the volume of people that they see, which explains a lot, right? Because I would always wonder when I would go into for a, um, you know, general checkup or whatever the case is. And I'm like, man, they just put me here and I'm sitting and I'm waiting and it's literally like a factory, right? Doctor comes in, gives me 2, 3 bullet points, takes some notes and is out. And then their assistants kind of supporting me. But I'm like, oh, that's the reason why this whole thing works. It's because insurance or they have to push out a certain amount for the actual practice for the insurance to be able to make sense, like from a financial standpoint. But I'm like, man, it's so fascinating how the whole industry works.
Yeah, they even talk about like the numbers that they're expecting, and like it's just they got, you know, metrics
Oh yeah,
that they want the providers to cover too.
of
It's like,
course,
oh man.
yeah. That's what I mean. Where I was blown away, where I was like, oh shoot, okay. When you look at like a doctor's total comp, again, at least for the facilities that I've done recruiting for, um, it's driven on patient volume. It's
Hmm.
not driven on the effectiveness of the consultations that they're giving. It's literally based upon headcount, right? Where I was
Yep.
like, man, that is wild. I mean, it's literally like a sales job because they, I did it for telemedicine and also in person, but I did
Hmm.
telemedicine, exact same thing, where they have to be available inside of these windows to service these people from a
Hmm.
from a telemedicine standpoint. And then if they're in person, there's a different metric. But anyways, yeah, it's super interesting how
So
it's like
like,
salespeople.
yeah. And I have a question for you about like around all that. So how does a business still kind of keep the value of, you know, of their work, even though they're kind of driven by all these numbers? Like how do they kind of, or what's your experience with gyms you worked with in, keeping that value in the front, like in an ad or whatever it is, like so that people will come in.
Um, so I mean, you and I have talked about this offline, right? But usually, what happens is if it's an advertisement that they are trying to drive guest traffic online,
Hmm.
what usually works the most effectively is some type of incentive based advertisement. And I'll give you an example, right? 10 days free or 9.99 a month or Black Friday special or um, $50 off of your enrollment fees. Um, first class free. All of those things are incentive based advertisement because there has to be a call to action that's compelling that gets them to take action today, right? The challenge is if they look at the math and you say, hey, first class free, but I have whatever, $25 drop in rate. Every lead that comes in, I'm giving up that $25 drop in rate, right? Because if they were to come in from my own advertisement or
Hmm.
organically, I would charge them 25, but because they're coming in from this ad that I put out there, I'm giving up that $25. Um, so the reality of it is there is this loss leader advertisement that an organization chooses to put out there with the goal of having X amount of lead volume to come in to convert. Because literally, when it comes to fitness memberships, they're playing a longer term game, right? Like, okay, I'll sacrifice a little bit up front, or sometimes a lot up front, to retain a member that will be a member for 8, 9, 10, 12, 18 months, right? So the recurring component is really what they're after, right? So it's worth it to be able to sacrifice. Hey, there's a $49 enrollment fee. I'll waive it today if you get started.
Hmm.
Your first days, you pay this amount today and your billing starts 30 days from now, because what they're really after is that 30 days from now, right? So the where it gets tricky is if your offering doesn't support the monthly, right? Because like, okay, I already gave it up on the front end. But if I'm saying, hey, my membership is $150 because we have this premium experience, okay, so I waive you waive a little bit up front. I come in the door, I have $150 that's coming in 30 days from now. If the value of my product is not worth that $150, then the likelihood of me defaulting goes up because the experience was poor.
Got it. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if the experience of it is really, really good, okay, hey, I didn't get the enrollment fee plus first month up front because that got waived, but I'm going to deliver a badass experience, and I'm likely going to pay my $150, and I'll likely bring somebody else along with me to pay $150 because it's so good. Right. So that's where the gamble is, right? It's like there's the marketing tactic to create the interest. There's a sales process when you interact. And then there's the operational component of what actually the experience is like. And is that experience consistent where it's going to, there's going to be more value, right? The value proposition is so great because it's like, oh man, of course I'll pay whatever, $49, $59, $150, $250 for my next service because it's that good. Right? Does that make sense or no?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. It's
a balancing act.
Yeah, it is. And then it's something I'm working on the back end is like providing more value than, I'm trying to find other avenues of how to provide more value to our customers, and not just the adjustment or even the value of the examination that I do here, but just more. What more can I do for them? Whether that's for example, like training tips, exercise tips. I'm like actually like leaning into like I'm gonna show some jiu-jitsu moves.
Let's go. Doing some jiu-jitsu privates.
Right.
Doing 2-on-1s in the lobby.
Right.
That's so funny. Doing grip breaks on the table. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, the that balancing act is tricky, right? But
yeah,
where it gets deceiving is sometimes somebody is a really good practitioner, but not that good of an operator, right? Somebody may be a really, really good marketer. They could generate a bunch of leads, but someone's not that good with converting those leads as a salesperson. And someone may be really good at marketing and sales, but that operational component is like that, it falls apart, right? And there's no actual full experience, and billing is off, and by whatever, my app doesn't work. There's a bunch of other things that come along with the operational component of, that whole thing. So yeah, man, it's an interesting juggling act for sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I was speaking with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about jiu-jitsu black belts and how you could be a jiu-jitsu black belt on the mat, but a white belt instructor. Right? It's like, hey, some people are just really good at doing it themselves, but they can't fully articulate the fundamental things that a brand new person and make it in a way simple enough for the brand new person to be able to do it. And that's the same thing with business, right? It's like, hey, you may be a black belt world champion on the mat, on the podium, and you may even be a black belt instructor. But to do all the other pieces of building the infrastructure around a business and, executing a great lease and building, the facility out on time and having all of the things that come along with that facility and all the correct protections in case people get injured and protocols in case some event happens, and how to be able to follow up if billing is, defaulted, and all of the operational components, if you don't have that, even though you're a black belt instructor and a black belt, world champion, and you try to open a business, doesn't necessarily always equate. Like, you have to have all of those pieces of the puzzle, right? It's like, okay, hey, I have to be able to do I don't necessarily have to do all of them, right? But I need to make sure that all those pieces of the puzzle are in place, right? So, anyways, super interesting.
Yeah, it's funny the jiu-jitsu black belt. You mean we can't just like smash the person and demonstrate that?
You can. Some people are freaking masochists, dude. Some dudes enjoy that.
Uh,
The yeah, not to get off topic, but literally, I was with my co-for yesterday, and we went down to go see to Chris's place. And anyways, man, there are levels to the game, and the moment you start to think that you're getting the hang of it, I mean, it's very easily to be put back in your place. And that's what was going on yesterday. Was yeah, Chris was tuning me up, man. I was like, oh man, it's so fun because like in the spirit of humor is where a lot of it, you know, kind of came about. But the other part of it is like, oh damn, I really don't know how to get out of this, and I don't like this 1 second, but I'm not going to show it.
Dude, does he so everything's out of that garage, huh? Like or does he have
uh,
an actual
Jim, no,
gym? Okay.
that's his. That's the home base.
Nice.
Yeah. So his model is a bit different, where he, um, where a lot of his, I guess, kind of business or revenue comes from, is he has, or they have this thing called combat based club, right? Which is how I initially met. Well, I initially met Chris and Melissa at a seminar, um, and then when I would go out there because I was dealing with my mom stuff, um, I started to cross train there as part of that like combat based club, which essentially they have a online platform and in person platform, and they have it where it's non affiliated, right? They pridefully call themselves unaffiliated, where you could be whatever association you want to go to, but if you want to participate in the network, and they have like an annual camp and all kinds of videos and open mats at the garage and all these different things, right? That come along with that. So part of it's that, and then the other part of it is Chris travels all over to do seminars.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
his, I mean, he has obviously a massive black belt network, but where a lot of his revenue comes from is people fly him in, and he hosts seminars, and there's a whole world of seminars. So that's his home base. But yeah, that garage, man, Mike Over was tripping out. He's like, oh my gosh, dude, this is like historic. Like this, I mean, just when you go in there, I got to take you down there one time, but the environment and the way that it is, it just feels like, oh wow, there's a lot of accumulated history on
Yeah.
when you're there for sure.
Probably feels sacred. Like
It does.
uh,
But the crazy thing is, I was sharing with Chris. I mean, I was sharing with Chris. I was sharing with Mike. That garage was the first Machado Academy, right?
nice. Wow.
Because yeah, so Hegan awarded Chris his black belt,
Hmm.
so he's obviously real tight with all those Machados and just that era when the Machados first came here, and then that occurred when again, I don't know the whole kind of political thing, but there was a falling out between um, Horion and them and the Machados. They Chris Chris has always had that property, and he had moved to the East Coast for a little bit, and he rented the house to the Machados, and all the Machados were living there, and that was the model back then. Was they would just teach jiu-jitsu out of the garage, and that was that garage. That is Chris's garage now, that which is kind of the combat-based garage. That same actual place was where the Machados had their first um, academy before they actually went out and got their own place, right? So
Wow.
there's a ton of history inside there for sure.
Dang. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's been
Wow.
in that garage for like 20 something years, dude. That's
Wow.
bananas, dude. Yeah,
Yes.
there was, he has all these like art things and just a bunch of like just stuff, right? From old school tournaments that are like hung up in the walls. Yeah, it feels very historic for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Um, man, it's good stuff. So let me ask you this. So going back to um, the things that you've learned, right? So you're going through a process of insurance, which I think is great. Um, you're beginning to start to dig into the kind of data a little bit more. Um, Through that, we've been experimenting with virtual assistant, which you and I had talked about this on another episode, and we finally pulled the trigger on the virtual assistant process. Um, what's your initial? So how long have we been working with Victoria now? 3 months, or I mean,
In
3 weeks,
3 weeks,
3 weeks, 4 weeks. I'll
three
tell you,
weeks.
the most recent one, um, Nation with Mark, and the B roll. I was like, okay, I like where we're going with this, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it, I know that you had mentioned that you were gonna have her start kind of assembling some of the content with including that B roll.
hmm
Um, do you anticipate a lot more of the content kind of looking or transitioning to that look and feel?
Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to spend more on creating a different look to the content now with the B rolls. Content creation is it's it's a lot.
Dude, forget
It's-
about it.
so we're almost like working together, and I'm just trying to give her as much tools as she can use to implement all those ideas, and she's doing a great job.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, she's doing really great.
Yeah,
But yeah,
super cool.
we plan to kind of expand into other types of content, like medium form and long form content as well. So yeah, it's gonna keep evolving. I love the look. Like she's
Hmm.
got even the regular ones without the B-rolls.
Yeah,
Like the views that she's choosing and the way the layout looks. It's definitely giving a different look for the account for sure.
now what has that been like? I mean, obviously there's the kind of training and onboarding process. And part of the onboarding is really offboarding some of the things that you're consumed with and onboarding that with the Victoria. What has that process been like?
You know, overall, like just off the top of my head, it's going great, right? It's just there's I didn't expect to. What I was hoping for is just I could just give it to her and not think about it, but
Yeah,
no, but
that's
that's a perfect world, right?
yeah, that's like
Uh,
literally saying, man, I thought I'd go to jiu-jitsu and I'd be a black belt, dude. Um, that's funny.
no, but she's doing great. It's it's fine tuning. Really, what I'm learning with her or working with her is fine tuning our communications and utilizing specific tools to see where things are moving, what we're working on, what do we plan on doing, you know, uh, the due dates of the task, and the little side notes as well. Like, hey, can you do a little bit of this? Like, we're really trying to optimize our communications using specific tools.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I think that this exercise, which is really what it's been designed to do, right, is like, okay, how do we leverage this resource and be able to come up with a blueprint so you could apply it to, you know, your practice going forward, right? The principles around it.
hmm
Same thing for me, right? As we continue to expand the business and the website that we're building and all these different things, how do we take resources like Victoria, or I mean, obviously even Victoria taking her along for the ride, but um, the there's tons of skilled people, right? And we don't necessarily have to have them work in front of us, but being able to have a, virtual marketing assistant and, to be able to help put some of those pieces of the puzzle together. I mean, I think it's a super fascinating process, right? Because again, there's a lot of talent, a lot of experience, but like, okay, how do we improve this process and make it a way that is duplicatable for you to be able to use, not just for this project, but also, future projects.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. We can have like the baddest content creator, but if your systems are not in place, it's not going to work
Yeah.
for
I mean, it'll
sure.
work partially. Just
Part
it just won't work to the way that we need it to. So
right.
yeah, I mean that in itself is learning, and we keep building.
Yeah. And she's doing great, adapting well to what we're providing or what our feedback is um and you know, I looking forward to what else she can bring to the table.
Yeah, I'm sure that as she starts receiving more and more of this feedback and being able to um, evolve and kind of start building her own style that aligns with what we're looking for, it'll be really cool. And right now, again, her initial assignment has been a lot around the Instagram content,
Hmm.
but I'll be anxious to see when she starts to build out some of the mid form, long form, some of the written, some of that other pieces of the puzzle. I think it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so switching gears, we're approaching Thanksgiving. Um, Obviously, a lot of world events have been occurring. What's your thoughts on this? Again, I'm not going to go down the what's your thoughts on the election, but I do want to talk about the how I believe the results of the election came about, and just the impact that guys like Theo Vaughn, the Nelk Boys, Joe Rogan, Dana White, like the impact that they have on such a massive decision. Um, I know you've been slammed. Have you paid much attention to any of that?
I have um not as much as I didn't know the Nelk Boys were promoting it as much, but I know that Joe Rogan and and um and Dana White are definitely supporting um him through all their socials and their network. But Theo Vaughn too?
Oh, dude, yeah. The- Trump was on Theo Vaughn, dude.
I didn't even know
Oh
that.
yeah, Theo Vaughn,
Wow.
of all people, did a long form interview with President Trump.
Oh, that's so interesting. No wonder Dana White mentioned him.
Yeah,
And
at,
I
at
saw
the end,
that
at the
clip.
awards. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I saw that clip. It's so interesting how much of an influence these groups have on the population. I mean, yeah, they definitely worked hard for to have that type of influence on everyone, especially Dana White and Joe
Hmm.
Rogan. You
Yeah,
know,
it took them 20, 30
yeah,
years to build that, but
yeah, it wasn't just a 1 year. How long have we been doing this podcast?
I don't know, 13 months, 14 months.
But yeah, it's so interesting how much of that is an influence. I don't know the how much voters, like how many more voters we got compared to last election, but I'm pretty sure there was a lot more people voting this election compared to the last election.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think what's so interesting about that is it's literally an entirely new playbook, dude.
Oh,
Because
yeah, you're thinking
you know
farther.
you think of obviously he won over um, President Trump's administration and Elon Musk's vision around uh, preserving the First Amendment, and that's the whole reason why he purchased X, was to be able to you know have a place where there is minimal to no censorship.
Hmm.
Um, and then you think of, you know, these massive platforms that these dudes have built, right? Joe Rogan, and again, for me, it's the most thing that blows me away is Theo Vaughn, right? How he
Mm-hmm.
contributed to that. But what was the most fascinating thing for me is both Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn. I don't know about the other ones, but I know for sure Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan invited the Harris administration to come on to have a conversation, but they avoided it. And for me, I'm like, oh, dude, I don't want to theorize, but it's like, dude, could things have been different if they did choose to go on platforms like that and at least run, you know, a similar play, right? Because it's almost like, what are they hiding by not coming on, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, or you know, is it they didn't believe that that platform would have an impact, and obviously it did, right? I mean, there's just like this kind of swing of momentum as
Mm-hmm.
you know people started to get on there. I mean, I was blown away when uh, listening to JD Vance, and JD Vance did Theo's as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I remember, you know, listening and I'm like, man, this is an ordinary dude that, you know, has some, you know, obviously some life experience, but also, and he seems very capable because I'm learning about him as a human. I'm not just learning about like, hey, what are the bullet points that you're going to say in this 60-second thing that's going to get edited and distributed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, for me that long form, because all those interviews, if you look them up, are, you know, 3 hours long. Like, dude, they had President Trump. I mean, PBD. Think about PBD.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, PBD. He had President Trump on there, and I don't know if you saw the some of the content that they did about how um, like the security detail that needed to
Mm-hmm.
go into that. Did you see that? The
Mm-hmm.
security detail that they needed to when they interviewed President Trump, and just the security detail and the logistics. Anyways, it was wild.
Wow.
If you look on uh, the PBD podcast Instagram account, they
It's
had shown like, you know, a clip of everything that needed that led up, kind of the POV behind the scenes
yeah.
leading up to the interview. But you know there's obviously a lot that goes into that logistically, and then also to just sitting down for 2-3 hours talk about
Yeah.
stuff.
You know how you mentioned that what are they trying to hide?
Mm-hmm.
Um do you think there are people out there that feel like they've been betrayed because or somewhat like they weren't supported because they didn't hop on?
What do you mean, like
Like do you
the
think like Democratic like side, the people,
uh-huh
do you feel
well
like they've been like not supported because or by their own vice president, Democratic vice president?
um possibly the thing about that is like the personality type that follow the that administration versus the personality type of the people that follow the Trump administration. Um, I don't even know if they would, you know, if they would be upset that Kamala would come on Joe Rogan, right? Even though the purpose of it was to be able to have a conversation, right? It's like
Hmm.
they're so anti the personalities that have any association or you give any opportunity to Trump where it like completely shuts them out. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if that was part of the strategy or if it was a scenario because they try to dictate their own rules, saying, okay, hey, well, if Joe Rogan wants to interview, it'll be 45 minutes. You got to fly to them, and it's going to be this controlled environment, which is the opposite of how long form content works, right?
Right.
It's not.
Authentic.
Yeah, it's not. Again, if I'm going to be forced to have 45 minutes and create certain sound bites, um, inside that 45 minutes, I'm sure you could get some of it done, but the likelihood of it coming out, what you really want to come out is going to be, I mean, it takes some time. And we're 54 minutes in and we're still like at the surface of some of this stuff that we've been, that we wanted to start talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Super fascinating, dude. Super, super fascinating.
Yeah. Definitely played a game. I mean, you were kind of mentioning it. It's going to change the battlefield for the next
Oh, dude.
election for sure.
Oh, 100%. I mean, even just throughout going forward,
Right.
right? It's literally one of those where, in an effort to stay relevant, like, I don't think that that's going to be the last podcast that they're going to do or someone from the administration is going to do. And
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like, there's going to be some continual ways to be able to get this message out. But yeah, man, it's super, super interesting how just the world, you know, discounts or is beginning to discount the regular, you know, ABC, NBC, CBS. Again, I think that there's obviously still audience there, but the people that are the people that are impacting the volume of people are going
Hmm.
towards this, YouTube. Like, did you see the amount of YouTube views
Yeah.
that pull you have your phone right now? Pull it up. Oh,
I'll put on my computer for
yeah.
you're comparing what the YouTube on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. How many views are they up to now? I mean, it's bananas, dude. When I had first saw that, I was like, holy moly, man, they're like up to 10 million like the first few hours. I mean, they're easily at 30 million.
48 million
48 million views. And that's only on YouTube.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
D-
Well,
did you?
that's only on YouTube. I remember, um, again, I haven't been on X since Elon bought it, but apparently you could watch long form videos on on X.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, because Joe Rogan was talking about, when you combine the two, they're like up to 70 million views or some crazy number. I'm like, that is bananas.
Wow. That is interesting. And
Yeah, and
I was
that's just Joe Rogan, right? When you start coupling Theo Vaughn and the Nelk Boys and
did you hear I saw a post Joe Rogan did where like if you can't find the show,
oh yeah,
directly click on this link how it was getting pushed out.
yeah, Shadow Band, they're like
Or
hiding it.
yeah, um uh, I was listening to this other podcast. They're saying that a lot of people were what do you call it? Reporting the video. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's not on the search engines.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I bet.
yeah,
I bet. I mean, I guarantee you that part of the strategy
right.
was to, hey, we're going to report this as misinformation or harmful content or whatever the
Hmm.
case is. Which, again, hey, people have the right to be able to view that and have an opinion on that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, but it just seems silly.
Yeah.
Um,
But it makes you think like if this is going to be a strategy using these platforms, they got to start thinking about this
yeah,
other,
yeah, all
all
the
of
counter.
these. Yeah, exactly. Man, yeah, it's going to be a whole new battlefield out there, man,
Yeah,
for the next election.
yeah, super interesting. Well, I think what's interesting, like if you just take that playbook and think through, like, how do you impact or how do you take a page out of that playbook for groundwork chiropractic, right? And it's okay, hey, maybe, you know, what is the Garden Grove version of Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn? You know what I mean? What's the Orange County version of the Nelk Boys that Dr. Archie can get on, right?
Yeah.
And literally that's what I've been thinking about. Of like, man, that playbook. Again, it's not some revolutionary playbook, right? Is one thing for us to be able to create content. It's another thing for us to be able to align with people and build relationships with people that have similar interests and being, available, right? In the event that there's an opportunity, right, for us to be able to do that, right? But literally, that's what I was thinking about. I'm like, man, that strategy applies to how you win a presidential election, or at least a major part of a presidential election. Like, how do you apply that to, groundwork chiropractic, off the 22 and 405 Valley View Boulevard, right?
Yeah, I had some things in mind, but I kind of fell off of it, just yeah, I could definitely I gotta dial back in to these strategies again for
Yeah,
sure.
pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought because it's like you see it on such a grand scale, and some
Hmm.
people are so busy having an opinion about it. And this is one of those where like you could take a step back and say, hey, well, if it worked for that, it's got to work for this,
Hmm.
right? But it's hey, what is the micro version of that, right? Which is, you have people with platforms that they align with, or at least give you a time of day, right? Because the, the President Trump endorsement from Rogan didn't come until literally the last minute, right? Where it was a scenario where they did the interview, continue to go, and again, whatever influenced that decision didn't happen till the very end, right? Because it's like, would Joe Rogan have endorsed President Trump if he wasn't on there,
Right.
right? Or would President Trump? I mean, would Joe Rogan feel differently if Kamala did go on there and have a 2-3 hour interview, right? Would
Yeah.
that have swayed his views and the audience's views, right? But it's like, hey,
Hmm.
President Trump chose to go down this direction and run a play that has not been run before, and that should work, dude. I mean, the interesting thing is I was listening to PBD's podcast, um, and they had his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump,
Mm.
and she was talking about the son Barron, right? Trump's son Barron.
He's like 18, does the marketing.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about that is if you listen to Theo's interview, um, he had said that to Theo, saying, "Oh, my son spoken highly of you, and it was important for me to be able to come here, and thanks so much for having me." But Laura, his daughter-in-law, had mentioned how they would be in the car with President Trump, and a call from Barron would come through, and he would come up with like, "Oh, I think you got to go to this whatever baseball game because there's all these people here and you could probably get more votes." So he has this one, he has obviously the mind of that, but also too, he's very relevant to what's happening in 2024 and
Oh
where,
yeah.
where the audience is. So I'm sure, part of the strategy is, was, okay, hey, how do we align ourselves with these folks, or at least have an opportunity to be able to share on these platforms? Because again, I can't help but to wonder of, man, if they took a different approach and said, oh, okay, yeah, you're going to go on there, I could go on there too, right? And,
Right.
and I don't got anything to hide, and let's talk about it, right? So yeah, super super interesting, dude.
I can see the other side of it where people are gonna want to start their own podcast and try to get them on
Sure.
as a way of revenue as well. As like, oh, let's just target, or let's just get our audience is just gonna be, I don't know,
Yeah.
everything around politics.
Sure. No,
And I'm
100%.
sure there's some out there, but they're gonna try to aim to get them on the show.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is how much range there is. Theo Vaughn is just one freaking hilarious. But he's had all kinds of random people
Yeah.
on there, right? His buddies are comedians, to to now President Trump, and the VP Vance, and um, again Joe Rogan has his buddies, Eddie Bravo and them doing the fight companion, and then having President Trump. I'm like, man, that is wild, wild to be able to see, right? It's super super interesting how this form of communication, is becoming more and more impactful to um, the way that people behave and people learn about new things, and again, how people learn about people and brands and stuff,
Hmm.
right? So, anyways,
Yeah.
craziness, dude. Dude, speaking about recent events, did you see the Kid Tolo in a second fight? Did you see
What?
that at all? Yeah,
No.
yeah. Kid Tolo. So you know how he has a contract with
One. Yep.
one championship, and he had before the whole Craig Jones Invitational, he had his first MMA fight, and then Craig Jones Invitational happened. He wins $1 million, and then this past week on Friday, he had his second MMA fight and dropped the dude. I mean, literally, as they were walking out, he dropped him with an overhand right, and then uh, yeah, the dude got dropped and a little bit of a scramble, and he got him into a darce. But man,
Sick.
yeah, it's crazy to think, man. Like that dude has a runway like no other. Because not only is he super marketable and super cool story, but on top of that, like man, he's just a specimen of an athlete. And I don't want to I don't want to discount it like he was just born that way. But man, he and his brother and his family have been training for, I mean, literally his entire life. So
Yeah.
that's crazy. Crazy to see. Doesn't
He was
surprise me.
wasn't he supposed to fight Mikey or something in a jiu-jitsu match?
He
Or
was, and then I forgot. Oh, what happened was,
like weight issues or someone got sick, didn't they?
no, um, after the Craig Jones Invitational, um, Cade was injured
Mm,
and had to recover because he had this MMA event with one.
got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy man. The the other part in I guess kind of upcoming MMA events, I was watching the embedded for John Jones. So he's fighting whatever next week, and I've seen some of the highlights. But Gordon was in that embedded, and as his jujitsu or grappling coach. And then I don't know if you saw on John Jones. Well, I don't think it was on John Jones's. It was on Gable Stevenson's. How Gable Stevenson was training with Gordon. So Gordon, gold medalist heavyweight Gable Stevenson, and John Jones were all training together. That's a freaking trifecta, dude.
For real, man. Like what? that's that's a lot of talent right there.
Dude,
What?
Gable Stevenson, dude, it's crazy. Like he was doing these uh uh overhand right into a swing single. I'm like, my God,
Oh
dude,
man,
that is scary. That is
it's a
like a
big
scary
dude.
drop of, yeah, oh man. It's crazy how athletic he is, man. Like I don't know if you watched that gold medal match when he won his gold medal, but like afterwards he did like a whole, you know, uh cartwheel, back handspring, somersault, freaking gymnastics floor campaign. I'm like, dude, this dude is whatever two something. I'm like, man, that is mind blowing how athletic that dude is.
Man, like how do you get those three guys in one room? Who
Uh,
planned that?
I don't know, someone really smart. Which again, it doesn't even take a lot of brains to be able to to be able to say that. But when you say,
Right.
man, one of the or arguably the best MMA athlete, the um, best nogi grappler, right in history, and a heavyweight Olympic gold medalist wrestler, right? I mean, it's like, dude,
So
that is
how do
just
you?
bananas.
When's the fight? That's next weekend, right?
Next weekend,
That's
yeah.
so. Do you think John Jones is gonna go for a takedown and a submission?
I don't know, dude.
How is he gonna win the fight?
I mean, I think he has a higher probability doing that, right? Than than him banging, right? No, again, I think he'll be fine, right? Because he's creative enough. But I think where he has an advantage is in his wrestling slash anti wrestling, right?
Hmm.
Is both wrestling offense and defense. I think he has, a higher probability of success going that way. Plus, also, too, I think what's interesting is when you think of just like this art of war, right? Is like, are you putting out this content to make Stipe think you're going to wrestle and grapple? Right? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas, like, okay, hey, well, if I want him to believe this, I'm going to put out all this great content. And I'm going to have Gordon Ryan and I'm going to have Gable Stevenson and we're going to show me in my practice, doing wrestling drills. And even when I got injured, the last time I couldn't wrestle is because I was practicing my wrestling. So it's like, man, I wonder if he is, is that part of the strategy, right? Where, hey, I'm going to
Make
put
him
out this content to confuse my opponent on what I'm actually going to do.
make him think he's going for the shot and just
Yeah.
hit him up top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could.
Well, the other thing too that I was thinking about is like, you think about that room, John Jones, Gable Stevenson, Gordon Ryan. At the end of the day, there has to be a coach that's guiding and facilitating that. It's not like, hey, you just put these three dudes in a room and they just kind of make up stuff, right? There has to be
Yeah.
a way that coaches, but like, could you imagine the level of coach that's needed to be able to facilitate those three dudes and be able to offer, perspective that would be impactful for all of them, right? Because everybody wins in that scenario, right? But it's like, okay, hey, if everybody's here focused on John Jones, like, how do you tell Gable Stevenson what to do unless you're a better wrestling or you're a coach that is impactful enough for him to want to be able to listen, right? So, anyways, I think the dynamic that happens in a room like that is like, man, not only do you put those three great athletes together, but there has to be somebody that is firm enough to be able to allow them to be able to do what they got to do, but also, regimented enough to be able to say, okay, hey guys, like this is what we're trying to get done, right? Because I could see, you could easily go down this road of like Gordon wanting to show whatever Ashigarami entries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, is that really what you want John Jones doing? Fighting Stipe Miocic, right? Or is that right? Because it's like, do you really want John Jones on his back doing that? Because it will open him up for punches, or like, hey, Gordon Ryan's the best at it, so a leg entry may be the way because, again, he's probably not practicing the defense around that. So,
Yeah.
anyways, super interesting that whole game.
If you're Stipe, would you want to watch what they're doing?
Yes, with a filter,
Yeah.
right? I think it is important to be able to see, right? But the interesting thing about media and content, it's what gets put out there is only what I want people to see. There's a lot of other stuff that
Mm-hmm.
nobody's seeing, right? It's a locked door, and even if it was recorded but didn't get distributed, there's obviously some limitations with that.
Yeah,
But
because
that,
there's some fighters that don't even like. I don't care what they're doing.
yeah, I'm
I don't
focused
want
on
to
what I'm doing.
watch. I'm gonna focus on me, and then it could be information that you miss and make you lose the fight.
Yeah,
So it's like it's such a game. It's such a game.
dude, forget about it, man.
Because that's what kind of like I think about when I go in like tournaments, jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't know how they're training, but if you kind of look at the bracket, you can like go on their Instagram, see how many days or whatever they're doing if they post on their socials.
Oh
Like
yeah,
so, I did that like when I first started competing, but now it's like I don't care. I'm gonna focus on me.
yeah, for
But
sure.
MMA is a different world. Like there's so many avenues.
Well, also too, I think what's interesting about that is, there's a designated fight against a very specific person.
True. Hmm.
So maybe not Stipe, definitely his coaches should be paying attention, right? I think that those are things that, as a coach, you have a responsibility to be able to figure out what the opponent you're going against, what their tendencies are, or where you think you can capitalize on that. So yeah, I think there's I think there's kind of both worlds, right? Of like, hey, I'm gonna focus on me. I can control me. I can control what he's doing. But someone's got to be able to, help lead the dance of, hey, we should be aware of, at least get some looks around these things, because this is some things I see them working on, or these are some things these are the people that are in his corner or in his camp, that these are the things that they have a tendency to do, or whatever the case is. But that's the whole strategy system.
It's gonna be a great fight.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What are we at? Damn, we're at hour 15, dude. You want to chat about dude, we haven't done this in a couple weeks, especially since we changed to a bi-weekly format.
Mm-hmm.
So since we last did it, we had Chris Martin, we had Mike Hofer, Joe Scargill, Rob Ingram, and also to what is the guy from Monster? Derek Banji.
Yeah.
So Derek Banji was kind of right around that. So those are probably the last five guests that we had. Any thoughts or takeaways from those episodes?
Derek, it was a fun conversation with him. They're all fun, but he had like, I don't know, for whatever reason, because Chris did the introduction, right?
Yeah.
So whenever I roll with Chris, because now that I know that they have a history, I would say, "Hey, I'm sending a message to you from Derek," and I start like just gas masking him while we roll. Like I'll just cover his. So I don't know. Derek just seems to have that kind of personality to just like have fun on the mats.
Oh
yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
Super fun for sure.
Chris Martin, that was a very like interesting, just overall conversation with him, man.
What was interesting about that was a Reddit thread that came after.
Oh yeah, that's right, man.
Yeah, what's interesting is like how big of a topic that actually is.
Yeah.
Because again, it's just one of those unspoken things that happen, but he's bold enough to talk about it.
For sure. I wanna see how that Reddit thread is doing now.
Yeah, I went off those first 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Reddit is something special, man, because you never know what the heck is happening, in those groups, man.
Feels like it was long ago, but it's 1 month ago. 234 upvotes. There's 214 comments going back around. And oh man. I'm trying to see the most recent comment, but I can't see right now. Anyways, yeah, there's
That's
like two
interesting.
sides to it. There's so many people that are having their own opinion about it. Yeah, that's very interesting topic to talk about.
Well, what's interesting is as the practice of jiu-jitsu becomes more and more common, knowing that is a potential risk, and really there's always going to be risk associated with doing jiu-jitsu, but knowing that strokes in general are there's a possibility of that. As more and more as a net gets wider, you'll have more and more cases, right? So it's an interesting subject for sure.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is again, I'm oblivious to any of that. And then when I saw it on the Reddit thread, I was like, oh, dang, this is happening, or this type of scenario has happened a lot more than, again, I'm aware of. I'm lost in my own little world of doing jujitsu, just trying to be able to figure out, basic things on like, can I find a gi that actually fits me correctly? Right.
What's the coolest rash guard out there?
Yeah, what's the coolest next rash guard I'm gonna get? Um, and meanwhile, that those potential things are happening, throughout the world, right? Of people
Mhm.
training jiu-jitsu.
I definitely, since then, I have been being more cautious or just aware of not only my partners but just myself, because I told in the episode, like, dude, I will let you, if someone has a choke on me, I'm gonna hold on till as long as I can.
Yeah,
It's like, I ain't tapping to this.
yeah, yeah,
Unless it, like, right away I feel it, but if it's slowly, I'm not gonna tap to this.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
wait till he lets go. It's
yeah,
either me or him.
yeah, yeah. I just need a quarter of an inch. I just
Yeah.
need a quarter. I need a
But
quarter of an inch to go do that. Well, what's funny about that is I've been having like this uh,
oh,
this
it's not
I don't
good.
know what it is, but um like in my throat I've been having like this. I don't know if there's like a bone or something that I don't know if it's a bone. I don't know what that is, a ligament or something that's in there that
That,
if someone puts on a gi choke, or someone slaps on a guillotine in a certain way and like presses up against that part of my neck, I'm like, oh dude, like you can have it. But I don't know what it is, but like hasn't gone away.
there's definitely ligaments there, and there's like a
Yeah.
floating bone too as well.
Oh dude, super
But
annoying. Have you ever had that?
no.
Yeah, I mean, literally, there's like this strange pain that's like deep inside there that I'm like, oh man.
Uh-oh.
And anyways, after listening to or after speaking with Chris, I was first like, oh man, I wonder if that has anything at all to do with any of it. But if it does, like, anytime I feel that, I'm gonna tap because. But if I don't feel that and there's a choke in there, I'm probably
Do you
gonna fight it.
do you feel like you're losing vision?
No,
Okay.
no.
Can you feel
Uh,
your left arm? Can you feel can you
yeah.
feel your body? Okay. Just
Yeah, we're good. We're good. I got my
okay, good.
hands. Yeah. Yeah. Super
um,
strange, man.
yeah, it's yeah, we got I think it just brings more awareness. I mean, no, that's
Dude,
good.
speaking of awareness, um, what about Mike Hofer and that conversation around microdosing?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was such an interesting topic, but I was doing more research on it and how it's helping a lot of people, anywhere from Alzheimer's to um, people who take the narcotics, right? The Adderalls can reduce that and take something more natural. It's an interesting. I feel like it's something that research they need to do more research on so that it can go a little bit more mainstream for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, especially when you think of, again, whether it's Alzheimer's, right? And I'm personally dealing with symptoms of that with my mom's situation. So, obviously that gets pretty heavy, right? When you
Hmm.
start to think of like the cognitive decline that comes with age, and like, hey, is there some preventative ways, right, that could do that or slow things down there? But the other part of it, with um, psychedelics and PTSD, of not just the
Hmm.
military, obviously military, but other people that have gone through various forms of trauma.
Hmm.
It's like, man, is that a better solution, right? Because a lot of times what people go to is they end up going to alcoholism or other types of recreational drugs that mask it, but also lead to things going down the other road, right? It's like, hey, is there some opportunities to explore, you know, the benefits of that, even in an environment that is, I mean, we're prescribing things like whatever, um, painkillers and antidepressants and all these other things. Like, is there a prescriptive type of form that can have those types of benefits? So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Great dude too.
Oh
Fun
yeah,
to
for
chat
sure.
with. Yeah.
Yeah, we should get him back on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, dude, what about the McDojo Life cult conversation?
He's a great dude.
Dude,
Rob.
freaking awesome.
Yeah, he and I'm surprised how well the episode came out with all the technical difficulties we
Mm-hmm.
had with him.
Yeah,
And he was
he
you
was a
know,
champ. He was good. He
yeah, he
worked right
was
through it.
cool about it. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it wasn't his first rodeo going through that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, the it looked like it was ours, dude. Everything that could go wrong went wrong on that episode, but
Yeah.
you fixed it. Good thing is Archie was on top of
But
it. What was
yeah.
interesting about that episode was the correlation that he made to, specifically he called out Catholicism,
Hmm.
right, and the Catholic rituals that you go through, and the alignment of martial arts and the impact that those two things could, or the parallels that those two things could have. Super interesting, right? Of like, oh, man, that's an interesting scenario, right? Because you have a series of people that are given opportunities that are just these, sociopath, narcissistic type of behaviors that, like, oh, I got this person listening, so now I could get them under my control. That's it's craziness, dude.
It's crazy to think how I can imagine it and how easily it can happen.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Not just a hearing from him, but like what I personally have seen and experienced.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad, but
Yeah. Well,
it's a
I
reality.
mean, yeah. I mean, what happens is there's kind of two worlds, right? There's the um, one world that um, somebody is out seeking information, and then there's this cult leader that has information that's seeking the power of, followers.
Hmm.
And then there's that one world, right, where those two things meet, and that goes down one road. And then the other part of it is like the generational impact, right? Because like if those people stay in it, and then they have kids, and those kids are being brought up in it, um, it's like, hey, those kids didn't have a choice.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. You get what I'm saying? Like
yeah, yeah.
they don't have a choice. They don't know any different, right? I mean, I was having this
Right.
conversation with Mike yesterday. We were in the car and we were talking about Scientology and Jehovah's Witness, right? Of just, the not only the financial benefits of the way that those organizations are structured, but we were also talking about like there's people that obviously get led into that or participate in that. That's one thing, but the other part of it is these kids that grow up and they believe that this is the only way to do things until they get into the real world, right? They get into the real world and they're like, hey, wait a second, my friends don't do this or whatever the case is. So that's crazy.
Oh, man. Yeah, crazy stuff, man. Just kind of makes me sick sometimes.
Dude, the craziest part is, so obviously we both like doing jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu has proven uh, to be a very effective, form of martial arts. But I think we could even get sucked into that, right? Where it's just like, all I do is practice jiu-jitsu. And, well, hey, if you don't practice the stand up part of it in a real self defense situation, you're just not going to sit down and, pull guard, right? So you're going to have to understand and expose yourself to wrestling styles and, judo, and have some awareness around boxing, kickboxing, offense and defense, and weapons, offense and defense, right? To really be proficient, right? But to be able to say all you need is jujitsu, period. It's like, it's kind of cultish. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
I see what you mean.
yeah, true. Only jujitsu is beneficial, but is that the truth? Is that the only way? It's like, well, no, that's the reason why there's mixed martial arts, and that's proven, right, to be able to be an effective form of combat. So anyways, it's fascinating.
Like, Rob, we need an intervention.
Yeah, coach us on this. That's funny, dude. Lastly, Joe Scarkill. So we were talking a little bit about this offline. That episode has been performing really, really well. And I think where the head fake is, we do a lot of we spend a lot of time on Instagram, both personally and also for this project. But, Joe doesn't have a big social media or a big Instagram following. He has a big LinkedIn following, and obviously, a ton of professional accolades, in his career in the Secret Service. But man, that episode, super, super fascinating, right? Of his storyline around how he was a wrestler. That whole thing went into local law enforcement, and then went into Secret Service. There's like a certain, I don't know what you call it, mystique. I don't know if that's the right word. A certain mystery of the Secret Service as an agency.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a series.
Yeah.
His episode. Like, we need more, Joe.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I had mentioned he and I have been talking, and I'm excited about getting him back on. We had, I was mentioning that he wanted to talk a little bit more about Secret Service specifically, right? We kind of danced a little bit around it, touched on it, but I didn't want to go down because I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. But specifically, I didn't want to put him into a spot where I forced him to answer a question that, created some potential issues. But, he had to introduce me to a guy named Anthony. I forgot his last name. I have it written down. Who's the director of communications for the U.S. Secret Service. And him and Joe are good friends. And, I'm excited to do our next episode. We have, especially with all the recent events that have been happening. The Secret Service, they've been working with everything that is going on. So anyways, there's some, I'm anxious to be able to re-record with him and share a little bit more on the Secret Service side versus the Jiu-Jitsu side.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to get on this one too. I want to ask a little bit more about the correlations and, the connections with both. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. Cool. What else? 134. Dang, it's crazy, man. 134.
I don't know. It feels like, wow, it's been that long. It feels like
Seriously.
Shorter than that, man. Well, I don't have anything else.
Yeah, me either, man. I'm looking. Yeah, shout out to Matt from Epic Roll and Drew from 10th Planet. Morietta. They're very strongly representing at PGF World. That That's cool. Cool little event. But
Yeah, great event. Great job, guys.
yeah, for sure. Um, cool, man. With that as a wrap, are we good? Any specific
Yeah.
shout outs? I mean, we got the BizJitsu podcast website that'll be released at the end of the year. Looking forward to getting that launch off the ground. Begin our the BizJitsu podcast newsletter that'll be coming out. Plus, also looking forward to reaching out to folks regarding some blog contributions across the BJJ and business community. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the beginning of the year, but we got to get all that framework done over the course of the next couple of weeks. So between that and the holidays, that's really it, man. We got a couple good episodes that we have lined up for the remainder of the year. But other than the website, anything else? Anything else, Dr. Archie, you want to announce for this episode?
Yeah, for anyone that's listening, I'm offering a free your first visit free when you schedule with me if you're in the West Garden Grove area off the 405 and 22 on Valley View.
Valley View exit. Let's go.
Just
Let's go.
mention BizJitsu 50. Let's get you in.
Let's get it. And with that, episode 56, Dr. Archie Barrical, the operator and owner of Groundwork Chiropractic in Garden Grove, California, 405 22 Valley View Boulevard. You can also get there from the 91 freeway, for the record. I went that direction yesterday. But other than that, thanks so much, Dr. Archie. Fun times, and see you guys on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye. All right, I'm gonna stop this.